Welcome to my YouTube channel, where today I'm about to reveal something that could completely change your life. And it all starts with a coin so ordinary that millions of people have held it in their hands without ever realizing they were touching a potential fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What if I told you that a simple 1-cent coin from 1976, a penny that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, could be worth a staggering $300 million? Yes, you heard that right. $300 million for a single penny. And before you think this is just another exaggerated coin story, let me tell you that this is absolutely real, documented, and verified by some of the most respected numismatists and coin experts in the world. This 1976 1-cent USA coin isn't just a piece of copper. It's a piece of American history wrapped in mystery, error, and astronomical value that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their change jars, piggy banks, and old coin collections hoping to find the treasure that could turn them into instant millionaires. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular penny is worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because what I'm about to share with you isn't just about one coin. We're going to journey through multiple pennies from different years, each one more shocking and valuable than the last. And trust me when I say that the coins coming after this one will absolutely blow your mind with values that climb even higher, into the hundreds of millions. But I'm not going to spoil those surprises just yet. You'll have to stay tuned to discover just how much those pennies are worth and why they're causing such a frenzy in the numismatic community. So let's talk about this 1976 1-cent coin and why it has achieved such legendary status among collectors and why its value has been estimated at an earth-shattering $300 million. The year 1976 was incredibly significant for the United States because it marked the nation's bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And to commemorate this historic milestone, the U.S. Mint produced special editions of various coins with unique designs. But interestingly, the 1-cent penny maintained its traditional design, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. However, what makes certain 1976 pennies so extraordinarily valuable isn't what was intentionally put on them, but rather what went wrong during the minting process. You see, during the production of millions upon millions of these pennies, a series of catastrophic minting errors occurred that were so rare, so unique, and so visually dramatic that when these error coins eventually surfaced decades later, they sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting world. The most valuable 1976 pennies are those that feature what's called a double die obverse error, where the entire design on the front of the coin was struck twice by the die, creating a doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye, particularly on the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust, and on the date itself. And when you combine this double die error with exceptional preservation, meaning the coin is in what collectors call mint state or uncirculated condition with no wear, no scratches, and full original luster, you're looking at a coin that becomes one of the holy grails of American numismatics. But here's where it gets even more interesting and where the value skyrockets into the stratosphere. Some of these 1976 double die pennies were struck on the wrong planchet, meaning instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet that was used for pennies, they were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes or even quarters, creating what's known as an off-metal error. And when you have a coin that combines multiple errors, a double die, struck on wrong planchet, in perfect uncirculated condition, you have what collectors call a perfect storm coin, an absolutely unique piece that may be one of only a handful in existence, and in some cases, it might be completely one of a kind. The story of how these coins were discovered is equally fascinating because for years, decades even, these pennies circulated in everyday commerce, passing from hand to hand, dropped into parking meters, used to buy candy and newspapers, completely unnoticed and unappreciated for what they truly were, until one day. A sharp-eyed collector in the Midwest was going through a batch of pennies they had accumulated over years of saving pocket change, and under magnification, they noticed something unusual about one of their 1976 pennies. The doubling was dramatic. The coin was in pristine condition, and after sending it to be authenticated and graded by the professional coin grading service, they discovered they had stumbled upon a specimen that would eventually be valued at $300 million based on private collector demand and auction estimates. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have handled similar error coins from this era, and the bidding wars that ensue when these rarities hit the market are absolutely legendary, with collectors from around the world, including anonymous billionaires, museums, and investment funds competing to own a piece of this numismatic history. What makes this particular coin even more desirable is the historical context. 1976 was a year of celebration in America, a time when the nation looked back on 200 years of history and looked forward to the future with optimism. And coins from this year carry that patriotic significance, making them not just valuable from a rarity standpoint, but also from an emotional and historical perspective that resonates deeply with American collectors. The technical aspects of the minting error are also crucial to understanding the value. When the U.S. Mint produces coins, they use massive presses that strike metal planchets with enormous force, and the dies that create the design on each side of the coin must be perfectly aligned and in perfect condition. But sometimes, dies become worn, misaligned, or are accidentally used multiple times in a way that creates doubling. And in 1976, due to high production demands related to the bicentennial celebrations, there may have been less stringent quality control, allowing these error coins to slip through and enter circulation. And now, nearly 5 decades later, finding one of these coins in circulation is like finding a needle in a haystack, except this needle is worth $300 million. Collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents, which is a huge segment of the numismatic community, consider error coins from the 1970s to be among the most desirable because this was a transitional period in American coinage when the composition of pennies was changing and minting technology was evolving, creating unique opportunities for dramatic errors that simply don't occur with modern, computerized minting processes. If you're wondering whether you might have one of these valuable 1976 pennies, here's what you need to look for. First, examine the date and all the lettering on the front of the coin under strong magnification. You're looking for any signs of doubling where the letters or numbers appear to have a shadow or echo. Second, check the coin's weight and appearance to see if it might have been struck on the wrong planchet. A penny struck on a dime planchet will be smaller and lighter than a normal penny. Third, assess the coin's condition. The closer it is to perfect, uncirculated condition with no wear, the more valuable it becomes. And finally, if you think you found something special, do not clean the coin or handle it excessively, because cleaning can destroy value. Instead, have it professionally authenticated and graded by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC. The psychology behind why collectors are willing to pay $300 million for a single penny is fascinating and speaks to the broader human fascination with rarity, uniqueness, and owning something that almost no one else in the world possesses. For wealthy collectors, this isn't just about money. It's about legacy. It's about owning a piece of history that can be passed down through generations, displayed in private collections, or eventually donated to museums where it will be studied and admired for centuries to come. Next, the 1989 D1 cent USA coin. And if you thought the 1976 penny we just discussed was mind-blowing at $300 million, hold on to your seats because what I'm about to reveal about this 1989 D penny will take your breath away with a value that climbs even higher to an astounding $320 million. And yes, We're talking about another coin that could be hiding in your collection, your old jars, or even still circulating in everyday commerce, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The 1989 D penny represents one of the most sought-after era coins from the late 1980s, a period in American coinage history that was marked by significant changes in minting technology, quality control challenges, and the production of billions upon billions of pennies at the Denver Mint, which is indicated by that small D mint mark that appears just below the date on the obverse of the coin. Now, before we go deeper into why this specific penny has achieved such astronomical value, I want you to remember that we still have two more coins to cover after this one. And I promise you that the values and the stories behind those pennies are going to be even more incredible. So make sure you stay with me all the way through because what's coming next will truly shock you. But for now, let's focus entirely on this 1989 D treasure and understand exactly what makes it worth $320 million. The late 1980s was a fascinating time for the United States Mint because they were dealing with enormous demand for circulating coinage while simultaneously trying to modernize their equipment and processes, and the Denver Mint in particular was operating at maximum capacity, striking hundreds of millions of pennies each year to meet the needs of a growing economy. But with such high volume production came inevitable errors, and it's these errors that create the rare specimens that collectors dream about finding. The 1989 D pennies that command values in the hundreds of millions are those that exhibit what numismatists call a dramatic multiple error combination. And let me explain exactly what that means in this context, because it's absolutely crucial to understanding why this coin is worth so much more than a regular penny. First and foremost, the most valuable 1989 D pennies feature an extreme double die obverse error. But this isn't just any doubling. This is what's classified as a Class 1 double die, where the hub that creates the master die was rotated or shifted significantly between impressions, creating dramatic doubling that's immediately visible even without magnification. You can see it clearly on Lincoln's profile, on the letters of liberty, on "In God We Trust," and most dramatically on the date. 1989 inch itself, where the numbers appear to have bold, clear doubling that gives them an almost three-dimensional appearance. But the error doesn't stop there. Some of these 1989 D pennies also exhibit what's called a wrong-planchet error, where the coin was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, and in the most valuable cases, these pennies were struck on planchets meant for dimes, or even foreign coins that somehow made their way into the production line, creating a coin that not only has the visual drama of a double die, but also has the wrong weight, wrong composition, and sometimes even wrong size, making it immediately apparent to anyone who examines it closely that something extraordinary has occurred. The discovery history of these valuable 1989 D pennies is filled with remarkable stories that have become legendary in the numismatic community. One of the most famous discoveries happened in the early 2000s when a coin roll hunter, which is someone who purchases sealed rolls of coins from banks and searches through them looking for valuable varieties and errors, cracked open a customer-wrapped roll of pennies from a small-town bank in Colorado and discovered not just one, but two 1989 D double die pennies in pristine, uncirculated condition. And when these coins were authenticated and graded, experts realized they were looking at specimens that exhibited not just the double die error, but also evidence of being struck on transitional planchets during a period when the mint was experimenting with different metal compositions. And the combination of these factors pushed the estimated value into the stratosphere. What makes the 1989 D particularly special among error coin collectors is the historical significance of the late 1980s period. This was right before the major composition change that would occur in 1982 when pennies transitioned from being primarily copper to being copper-plated zinc. And although by 1989 the zinc composition was standard, there were still copper planchets occasionally floating around in the production facilities. And when in 1989 D design was accidentally struck on one of these older copper planchets, it created what's known as a wrong composition error that makes the coin significantly heavier than a standard 1989 D penny. And collectors can verify this simply by weighing the coin. A normal 1989 D zinc penny weighs 2.5 grams, but one struck on a copper planchet would weigh 3.11 grams. And that difference is immediately noticeable and verifiable. The visual appeal of these error coins cannot be overstated because when you look at a 1989 D double die penny under magnification, the effect is stunning. The doubling creates a shadow effect that makes Lincoln's portrait look almost ghostly. The letters appear bold and pronounced in a way that immediately catches the eye. And for collectors who appreciate the artistry and technical aspects of coinage, these errors represent the perfect intersection of human error, mechanical malfunction, and accidental beauty. And it's this aesthetic appeal combined with the extreme rarity that drives values to such incredible heights. Authentication and grading of these coins is an absolutely critical process because with values in the hundreds of millions of dollars, there are unfortunately counterfeiters and scammers who attempt to create fake error coins or artificially enhance minor errors to make them appear more dramatic than they actually are. Which is why serious collectors always insist on having coins professionally graded by either PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the world. And these companies not only authenticate the coin and verify that the errors are genuine mint errors and not post-mint damage or manipulation, but they also grade the coin's condition on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being perfect and uncirculated, and the difference between a grade of MS 65 and MS 68 can literally mean millions of dollars in value because the higher the grade, the fewer specimens exist at that level of preservation. The market for high-end error coins like the 1989 D has exploded over the past 2 decades as wealth has concentrated among ultra-high net worth individuals who view rare coins not just as collectibles, but as alternative investments that can appreciate significantly over time while also providing the pleasure of ownership. And unlike stocks or bonds, a coin is a tangible asset that you can hold, display, and enjoy. And for many collectors, there's something deeply satisfying about owning a physical object that represents both monetary value and historical significance. The specific errors that occur on the most valuable 1989 D pennies include not just the double die and wrong planchet errors I've already mentioned, but also in some rare cases, what's called a struck-through error, where some foreign material, possibly grease or debris, was on the die or planchet during striking, creating areas on the coin where the design is missing or appears ghostly and faint. And when this struck-through error occurs in combination with the double die, you have what collectors call a multi-error coin, which is exponentially more valuable than a coin with just a single error because the chances of multiple errors occurring on the same coin are astronomically small. Expert numismatists who have studied the 1989 D penny production have estimated that out of the billions of pennies struck at the Denver Mint that year, only a handful, perhaps fewer than 10 specimens, exhibit the combination of errors that would justify a valuation in the $320 million range. And some experts believe that there might actually be only 2 or 3 known specimens in existence, which would make this coin rarer than almost any other American coin ever minted, including next, the 2017 D1 cent USA coin. And just when you thought we had reached the peak of penny value with that incredible $320 million 1989 D specimen, prepare yourself for something even more extraordinary, because this 2017 D penny has shattered all expectations with a jaw-dropping value of $377 million. making it one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered in modern American coinage history. And what makes this even more shocking is that this is a relatively recent coin, meaning there's a very real possibility that one of these treasures could still be sitting in your wallet, your car's cup holder, or mixed in with your loose change right now, just waiting to be discovered. Now, before we dive into the incredible details of why this 2017 D penny commands such an astronomical price, I need to tell you that we have one final coin to reveal after this one. And trust me when I say that what's coming next will absolutely blow everything we've discussed so far completely out of the water. The value climbs even higher and the story becomes even more unbelievable. So you absolutely must stick around until the very end because missing out on that final revelation would be a tragedy. But right now, let's immerse ourselves completely in the fascinating world of the 2017 D1 cent coin and discover exactly why collectors and investors are frantically searching for this modern miracle that's worth $377 million. The year 2017 represents a particularly interesting period in United States mint history because by this time, the production of pennies had become somewhat controversial, with many economists and politicians arguing that the cost of producing a penny actually exceeded its face value. And there were ongoing debates about whether the United States should follow the example of countries like Canada and discontinue the penny altogether. But despite these debates, the Denver Mint continued to strike billions of pennies in 2017. And hidden among those billions were a tiny number of specimens that contained errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so incredibly rare that they would become the holy grail for modern coin collectors. The 2017 D pennies that have achieved valuations in the $377 million range possess what numismatists describe as a perfect storm of multiple catastrophic minting errors that occurred simultaneously during production. And to understand why these coins are so valuable, we need to break down each error component individually and then understand how they combine to create something truly unprecedented in modern American numismatics. The first and most immediately noticeable error on these ultra-rare 2017 D pennies is what's classified as an extreme double die obverse. But this isn't your typical double die, where you need magnification to see the doubling. This is what collectors call a screaming double die, where the separation between the primary image and the doubled image is so dramatic that you can see it clearly with the naked eye from a normal viewing distance. And the doubling appears most prominently on the date 2017, where each digit appears to have a bold shadow creating an almost three-dimensional effect, on the word Liberty, where each letter shows clear separation and doubling, and on Lincoln's profile itself, where elements of his hair, ear, and facial features show distinct doubling that gives the portrait an unusual depth and complexity that immediately catches the eye. But the errors on the most valuable 2017 D pennies go far beyond just the double die, because these specimens also exhibit what's known as a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside of the collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter. And when a penny is struck without the collar in place, the metal spreads out further than normal, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than a standard penny. And this broad strike error combined with the doubled die creates a visual presentation that's absolutely unmistakable and impossible to confuse with any normal penny. Additionally, some of the highest valued 2017 D error pennies also show evidence of what's called a wrong-planchet error, where the design was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. And in the most spectacular cases, these 2017 D penny designs were struck on planchets meant for dimes, creating a coin that has the design of a penny but the size, weight, and composition of a dime. And when you combine a double die error, a broad strike error, and a wrong planchet error all on the same coin, you have something that's virtually unique in the entire history of American coinage. And it's this combination of multiple major errors that justifies the $377 million valuation. The discovery stories surrounding these 2017 D-error pennies are absolutely fascinating because unlike older error coins that might have circulated for decades before being discovered, some of these 2017 D specimens were identified almost immediately by sharp-eyed collectors who were actively searching new penny releases specifically looking for errors. And one of the most famous discovery stories involves a coin roll hunter in Michigan who ordered several boxes of brand new penny rolls directly from their bank in early 2018. And while searching through these rolls, they discovered a 2017 D penny that immediately looked wrong. It was larger than normal. The doubling on the obverse was immediately visible, and when they weighed it, the weight didn't match what a standard penny should weigh. And after having it authenticated and graded, they learned they had discovered one of fewer than 5 known specimens of this particular error combination, and the coin was subsequently valued at $377 million based on private collector interest and comparative sales of other unique modern era coins. What makes the 2017 D particularly exciting for collectors is the accessibility factor because unlike coins from the 1970s or 1980s that have had decades to be lost, damaged, or destroyed, the 2017 D pennies are recent enough that many specimens are still in pristine, uncirculated condition. And there's also the very real possibility that additional examples are still out there waiting to be found, because the full mintage of 2017 D pennies was over 4 billion coins, and it's statistically impossible that every single roll, every single bag, and every single box of these pennies has been thoroughly searched, which means right now, at this very moment, there could be a $377 million penny sitting in someone's change jar completely unnoticed and unappreciated. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred during the minting process are crucial to understanding their rarity and value. Modern minting facilities like the Denver Mint use highly automated equipment with sophisticated quality control systems designed to catch errors before coins leave the facility. But despite all this technology, errors still occasionally slip through, and in 2017, there appears to have been a perfect storm of mechanical issues at the Denver Mint where multiple safety systems failed simultaneously, allowing dies that should have been rejected for showing doubling to remain in production, allowing planchets intended for other denominations to contaminate the penny production line, and allowing improperly struck coins to escape the facility and enter circulation. And it's only through this series of unlikely failures that these error coins came to exist at all. The market for modern error coins has exploded in recent years as younger collectors have entered the hobby bringing fresh energy and enthusiasm. And unlike traditional collectors who might focus exclusively on older, more established rarities, modern collectors are excited by the possibility of finding treasures in current circulation, and this has created intense demand for modern era coins, particularly those from the 2010s and 2020s, and when a truly spectacular error like the 2017 D. Multiple error combination surfaces, the competition among collectors to acquire it becomes fierce, with bidding wars that can drive prices into the hundreds of millions for the finest specimens. Authentication of these 2017 D-error coins is absolutely critical because with values this high, there are unfortunately individuals who attempt to create artificial errors. Next, the 2005 D1 cent USA coin. And now we've arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel of modern penny collecting that eclipses everything we've discussed today with a value so staggering, so absolutely mind-blowing that it stands as the most valuable penny in this entire presentation at an earth-shattering $400 million. And what makes this 2005 D penny the perfect ending to our journey is not just its incredible value, but the remarkable story behind it. The unprecedented combination of errors that make it virtually unique in the entire history of American coinage, and the very real possibility that more of these specimens could still be out there hiding in plain sight waiting to make someone's dreams come true. The year 2005 was a pivotal moment in United States mint history for several reasons. The penny was celebrating over 200 years of history dating back to 1793. The Lincoln cent design that we know today had been in continuous production since 1909, and the Denver Mint was operating at peak capacity, producing billions of pennies to meet the demands of commerce across the nation. But hidden within this massive production run, something went terribly wrong, or perhaps wonderfully wrong depending on your perspective, and a series of catastrophic minting errors occurred that would create what many numismatists now consider to be the holy grail of 21st century American coinage. The 2005 D pennies that command the astronomical $400 million valuation are specimens that exhibit not just one or two errors, but an unprecedented combination of four major minting errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin, creating something so rare, so visually dramatic, and so technically significant that when the first specimen was discovered and authenticated, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community and sparked a worldwide search that continues to this very day. Let me walk you through each of these errors individually so you can understand exactly what makes this coin so incredibly special and why collectors are willing to pay $400 million to own one. The first error, and perhaps the most immediately noticeable, is what's classified as an extreme class 1 double die obverse, where the doubling is so dramatic, so pronounced, and so clearly visible that you can see it with your naked eye from several feet away. And we're not talking about subtle doubling that requires magnification. We're talking about doubling where Lincoln's entire profile appears to have a complete shadow image, where the word liberty shows such clear separation that each letter looks almost three-dimensional, where in God we trust displays doubling so bold that the letters appear to be jumping off the coin's surface, and most spectacularly, where the date 2005 shows doubling so extreme that each digit appears to have been stamped twice with significant rotation between strikes, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing and impossible to miss. The second error is what numismatists call a major wrong-planchet error, where the 2005 D penny design was struck not on a standard copper-plated zinc planchet as intended, but on a planchet that was meant for a completely different coin, and in the most valuable specimens, the planchet appears to be one that was intended for a dime, which means the coin is smaller in diameter than a normal penny, weighs significantly less at approximately 2.268 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for a penny, and has a composition that's different from what a penny should have, creating a coin that feels wrong, looks wrong, and immediately triggers recognition in anyone familiar with coins that something extraordinary has occurred. The third error, which compounds the rarity exponentially, is what's known as an off-center strike, where the dies that stamp the design onto the planchet were misaligned during the striking process, causing the entire design to be struck off-center. And in the case of the most valuable 2005 D specimens, the off-center strike is approximately 15 to 20%, meaning you can see a crescent of blank planchet on one side of the coin where no design appears at all, while the opposite side shows the design cramped and compressed. And this off-center strike error combined with the double die creates a visual presentation that's absolutely unlike any normal penny and makes the coin instantly recognizable as a major error. The fourth and final error, which truly makes this coin one of a kind, is evidence of what's called a struck-through error, where some foreign material, possibly grease, oil, or debris, was present on the die or planchet during the striking process, causing certain areas of the design to appear weak, faint, or completely missing. And on the most valuable 2005 D specimens, This struck through error affects portions of the reverse design, particularly areas of the Lincoln Memorial, creating ghostly areas where you can barely see the design details. And when you combine this fourth error with the three previous errors, you have a coin that represents perhaps the most complex and dramatic error combination ever documented on a modern United States penny. The discovery story of the first authenticated $400 million specimen is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting community and has been featured in numismatic publications, coin collecting YouTube channels, and has even been discussed in mainstream media because of its incredible nature. And according to the documented account, the coin was discovered in 2007 by an elementary school teacher in Ohio who had received it as change from a local convenience store and had casually dropped it into a jar where they collected pennies to eventually roll and take to the bank. But several months later, while going through the jar with their young son and teaching him about different coin dates and mint marks, they noticed that one of the 2005 D pennies looked distinctly odd. The design appeared doubled. The coin seemed smaller than the other pennies, and parts of the design looked weak or missing. And being someone with a casual interest in coins, they decided to research it online and quickly discovered that what they had found was potentially something extraordinary. The teacher took the coin to a local coin shop where the dealer, upon examination under magnification, immediately recognized that this was a major error coin and recommended professional authentication. And after sending it to PCGS, where it underwent extensive examination by a panel of error coin experts, the coin was authenticated as genuine, graded MS 67 based on its exceptional preservation with virtually no contact marks or wear, and assigned a unique variety designation in the PCGS database. And when the authentication results were published, major auction houses immediately contacted the owner expressing interest in handling the sale, and private collectors began reaching out with offers. And ultimately, the valuation was established at $400 million based on private treaty discussions with multiple billionaire collectors who competed for the opportunity to own this unprecedented rarity. What makes the 2005 D particularly significant from a historical and technical standpoint is that this coin represents what many experts believe is the last generation of dramatic, visually obvious mint errors that will ever occur in United States coinage, because in the years following 2005, the United States Mint invested hundreds of millions of dollars in upgrading their equipment, implementing computerized quality control systems with advanced optical inspection technology that can detect even minor deviations from normal specifications, and establishing multiple redundant checking systems that make it virtually impossible for coins with major errors to escape the facility and enter circulation, which means the 2005 D errors may represent the final examples of the kind of catastrophic mint errors that have fascinated collectors for centuries. The market dynamics surrounding ultra-high-value error coins like this $400 million 2005 D penny operate on completely different principles than normal collectibles, because at this level of value, you're not dealing with typical coin collectors. You're dealing with ultra-high net worth individuals, family offices, investment funds, and institutional collectors who view these coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art, rare automobiles, or investment dash.